the sea. To understand this kingdom, you must first understand the sea. It is the blood that flows through its veins, the border that defines it, and the horizon that has always beckoned its people. Welcome to Denmark, a nation carved from the waves and the wind. On the map, it appears as a fragmentation of land, a peninsula and an archipelago scattering into the cold embrace of the North and Baltic seas. But do not let its size deceive you. This low-lying land, where no point is more than 50 kilometers from the coast, is the oldest continuous kingdom in Europe. History here is not buried deep underground. It stands silent in the mist of the moors. Over 1,000 years ago, this was the heart of a terrifying power. The Viking Age. From these fjords, longships crafted with terrifying precision sailed out to conquer England, besiege Paris, and navigate the Volga. They were traders, warriors, and explorers who etched their runic alphabet across the face of the known world. King Gorm the Old and his son, Harold Bluetooth, united these tribes under a single cross, turning a pagan warrior society into a Christian nation that would endure for a millennium. The monarchy of Denmark is an unbroken chain, a living timeline that stretches back to the mythical mists of antiquity. It is said that in the year 1219, during a crusade in Estonia, the Danish flag, the Dannebrog, fell from the heavens, blood-red with a white cross. It is the oldest national flag in the world still in use today. It represents not just the state, but the enduring spirit of a people who have survived empires, wars, and the loss of territory, only to emerge more unified. Yet, the true character of the Dane was not forged in victory, but in loss. Once, Denmark ruled all of Scandinavia. But centuries of war with Sweden and Prussia stripped the kingdom of its grandeur. This contraction of borders created a unique national psyche. They turned inward. They looked at the heath, the sand, and the clay, and they decided to conquer themselves. Outward loss, inward gain. This philosophy built the modern Danish state. It created a society based on trust, equality, and a fierce, quiet pride. Walk through the streets of Copenhagen today, and you will see the physical manifestation of this spirit. It is a city of spires and copper roofs, balanced perfectly with glass and steel. But notice the silence. There is no chaos here. There is an order that feels organic. The bicycle is not merely a tool of transport, it is a symbol of freedom and equality. Whether you are a prince or a bricklayer, you ride the same rain-slicked streets against the same biting wind. It is the great leveler. The world is fascinated by the Danish concept of Hygge. They market it as candles, wool blankets, and warm pastries. But Hygge is not a marketing strategy, it is a survival mechanism. In a land where darkness reigns for half the year, where the winter is grey and endless, the Danes learn to create their own light. It is the art of intimacy. It is the deliberate creation of a sanctuary against the cold reality of the world outside. It is social cohesion weaponized against depression. But there is a sharp edge to this comfort. The law of Janti. An unwritten code that permeates the Scandinavian soul. Do not think you are anything special. Do not think you are better than us. It keeps the society flat, humble, and cohesive, but it also demands conformity. In Denmark, the collective is always stronger than the individual. This is the foundation of their welfare state, a system where high taxes are paid not with resentment, but with the understanding that no one should fall too far. Look at the landscape. It is gentle, rolling, and undeniably flat. There are no mountains to block the view, physically or metaphorically. This geography has shaped an architectural mind that is obsessed with light and space. Danish design is celebrated globally not because it is fancy, but because it is functional. It strips away the unnecessary. From the furniture of Orren Jacobsen to the sails of the Sydney Opera House, the Danish aesthetic is one of clarity in a chaotic world. However, the story of Denmark is incomplete if we only look at the small European peninsula. We must cast our eyes north to the North Atlantic realm, to the Faroe Islands. 18 volcanic rocks jutting out of the furious ocean. Here, the language is ancient, close to Old Norse, and the culture is rugged. They are part of the kingdom, yet distinct, a reminder of the maritime reach that once dominated the seas. And then there is the giant in the room. Greenland. Kalalit Nuuk. It is the world's largest island, a massive continent of ice and stone that dwarfs Denmark proper by 50 times its size. This is the geopolitical pivot of the 21st century. For decades, it was seen merely as a frozen outpost, a burden on the Danish treasury. But the world has changed. The ice is melting, and beneath it lies the future. Greenland is no longer just a place of hunters and fishermen. It is a treasure chest. Rare earth minerals, neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, essential for the technology of tomorrow, lie buried in its rocks. As the Arctic ice recedes, new shipping lanes are opening, turning the top of the world into the new Mediterranean. And the sharks are circling. The great powers of the East and West have turned their gaze toward Nuuk. It is no secret that the United States has looked at Greenland with desire for over a century. From early strategic offers to recent, headline-grabbing proposals to purchase the island outright, Washington sees it as the ultimate aircraft carrier, a stationary fortress to dominate the North Atlantic and the Arctic approach. The Thule Air Base is already there, a silent sentinel in the snow, watching for missiles over the pole. But the ambition goes deeper. And they are not alone. China calls itself a near-Arctic state, a title that defies geography but declares intent. Beijing wants access. They want the minerals for their batteries and the ports for their polar Silk Road. They see Greenland as a gateway to Europe. Russia, rebuilding its northern military bases, watches warily from across the ice. The Kingdom of Denmark, a small nation of 6 million people, finds itself the gatekeeper of the most contested real estate on Earth. This puts Denmark in a precarious position. It must balance its loyalty to the NATO alliance, its economic interests with China, and, most importantly, the growing independence movement of the Greenlandic people. The Inuit population of Greenland is reclaiming their identity. They own the land. Any decision about the uranium, the oil, or the zinc must go through them. Copenhagen walks a tightrope, holding the kingdom together while the centrifugal forces of geopolitics try to tear it apart. Back on the mainland, the economy has transformed. Denmark is no longer just a nation of farmers and bacon exporters. It is a green energy superpower. They harness the very wind that used to batter their coasts. Today, the horizons are lined with white turbines, spinning in the gales of the North Sea. They have companies like Maersk, whose container ships move a significant percentage of global trade. They have pharmaceutical giants keeping the world healthy. It is an economy of high efficiency. Yet, despite this modernity, the past is never far away. Visit the bogged lands, and you might stare into the face of the Toland man, preserved in peat for 2,000 years, his expression peaceful yet haunting. Visit the round churches of Bornholm, built as fortresses by the Knights Templar. The layers of history here are dense. Every stone, every castle, every brick tells a story of survival. The Danish military, though small, is highly professional. The Sirius dog sled patrol still traverses the empty, frozen wastes of northeast Greenland, asserting sovereignty with rifles and sleds, just as they have for decades. The Royal Navy patrols the jagged coastlines. They are the watchers in the north. In an era of rearmament, Denmark is waking up to the reality that soft power must be backed by hard steel. Socially, the country faces the challenges of the modern era. Immigration, integration, and the preservation of that famous social cohesion. How do you maintain a high-trust society in a globalized world? It is the question that defines their current political landscape. They protect their borders and their culture fiercely, sometimes controversially, determined to keep the welfare state from fracturing under pressure. There is a melancholy to the Danish landscape. The grey sky, the pale light, the endless rain. It is not a place of loud colours. But in that greyness there is a profound beauty. It forces you to look closer, to appreciate the texture of a brick wall, the warmth of a candle, the taste of rye bread. It teaches patience. It teaches that the good life is not given, it is crafted day by day, despite the weather. From the fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen to the philosophy of Kierkegaard, this land has produced minds that grappled with the human condition. Perhaps it is the isolation of the peninsula that breeds such introspection. They ask, what does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be a good citizen? And the answers they found have made them, consistently, one of the happiest nations on earth. But let us not mistake happiness for naivety. The Danes are pragmatists. They know their history. They know that being small means you must be smart. You must be agile. You must be useful to the world, or you will be swallowed by it. This pragmatism is their armor. It is what allowed them to transition from a colonial power to a humanitarian one, and now to a green leader. Consider the bridge. The Øresund Bridge. A marvel of engineering disappearing into the sea to connect Denmark to Sweden. It symbolizes the modern Danish ambition, connection, trade, openness, but always on their own terms. They build bridges, but they keep the keys to the gate. As we look at the Kingdom of Denmark today, we see a nation that punches well above its weight. It controls the gateway to the Baltic Sea. It holds the keys to the Arctic. It sets the standard for sustainable living. It is a mouse that can roar when it needs to, protected by alliances but defined by its own stubborn will. The future of this realm is uncertain. Will Greenland eventually break away and become an independent state funded by its own resources? Will the pressure from the superpowers force Denmark to choose sides in a new Cold War? These are the questions that keep the lights burning late in the offices of Christiansborg Palace. But for now, the flag still flies. That white cross on a red field, falling from the sky 800 years ago, still waves over the palaces, the allotments, and the ships at sea. It waves over a people who have mastered the art of living well in a difficult place. A people who took the storm and turned it into energy. Who took the darkness and turned it into Hygge. This is the Kingdom of Denmark. It is not just a place on a map. It is a lesson in resilience. It is a testament to the idea that a nation is not defined by the size of its army, but by the strength of its society. From the ancient stones of Jelling to the melting ice of the Arctic, the story continues. As the sun sets over the North Sea, casting long shadows across the dunes, the silence returns. But it is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with history. Filled with the whispers of Vikings, kings, and commoners who built this land, stone by stone, wave by wave. The world changes. Empires rise and fall. But the kingdom remains. Anchored in the sea, looking north, ready for whatever the winds of history bring next. This is the land of the Danes. Small in size, infinite in spirit. A fortress of trust in a world of suspicion. A beacon of light in the northern dark. And as long as the sea surrounds it, as long as the wind blows, Denmark will endure. Beautiful. Melancholic. Eternal.